Okay, so now we will have the next topic, which is tax administration remedies. Okay, so under the NIRC, tax remedies under NIRC. The internal revenue taxes are self-assessing. No further assessment by the government is required to create a tax liability according to VTOG 2006. The aspects of taxations are divided into legislative and administrative. So we have the aspects of taxation. The first stage, which is the legislative aspect. The second stage is the administrative aspect. So under the first stage, which is the legislative aspect, the levying of tax laws. While the second stage, we have the tax assessment and the tax collection. So let's go first on the terminologies used. No? When we say legislative aspect of taxation, it is the process of levying or making taxation laws. It is vested in the legislative branch of the government and is purely legislative in character. When we say administrative aspect of taxation, it refers to the various procedures in tax assessment and tax collection. Usually, the executive branch of the government, through its various administrative offices, implements the administrative aspect of taxation. Okay? Okay. Sagaran manggod na anatay mga tax laws, no? Based on the tax laws nga. This is our VAT, 12%. We have the percentage tax, 3%. And then meron pa rin tayong katong 8%, no, sa income tax, no. Na option na 8%. And we have also the income tax, the progressive tax rate. That's part of the tax laws, no, in the legislative aspect. So in the administrative aspect, no, hindi naman siya. May mga procedures yung BIR just to collect tax, no. May mga procedures. So it's on the executive branch of the government nga pupuntahan ang business, titingnan, i-assess yung tax, kung tama ba ang tax or hindi. So we have the taxpayers' remedies. First is assessment and the collection. So the concept of tax assessment. Tax assessment is the process pertains to the computation and determination of the tax liability of taxpayers based on the prevailing tax laws, especially if there are delinquency and tax deficiency. So let us define, no, ano ang difference. When we say deficiency, this is the amount still due and collectible from a taxpayer upon audit or investigation. So, gi-audit, gi-investigate ang business, may kulang, so deficient yung tax na girimit, so deficiency. Delinquency, failure of the taxpayer to pay the tax due on the date fixed by law or indicated in the assessment notice or letter of demand. Okay, so what are the requisites for a valid assessment? So it must be issued by the BIR based on findings of fact and or law, the actual facts. The other one is based on factual and or legal basis of the assessment must be stated, otherwise the assessment is null and void, and contain a computation of tax liabilities, contain a demand for payment within the prescribed period, and it must be sent to the taxpayer. Okay? Bakit mag-assess ang BIR? Of course, the BIR would like to collect more tax. Di ba? Kasi the tax is the lifeblood of the government. Without tax, remember yung first lesson natin, without tax, the government cannot pay their obligations. Ano yung ibabayad sa mga government employees? Ano yung ibabayad sa mga projects ng government without the tax? Diba? So, needed yung tax. So, maghahanap yung BIR na yan ng mga assessment kung especially if delinquent or deficient yung tax. Ang hanapan yan, no? So, they will assess you. So, dapat, no, yung 6, issued by the BIR, may findings talaga, no? And then, ay legal basis. Okay, kung wala, null and void yan. There is competition also and demand for payment, and it must be sent to the taxpayer. By employing mathematical computations in ascertaining the quantity of finished products, this is on the base of CIR versus PASCOR, no? Basis assessment on mere inferences and presumptions. The presumption of correctness cannot be based on another presumption. An assessment is deemed made when the notice to that effect is released, mailed, or sent to the taxpayer for the purpose of giving effect to the assessment. So, dapat it must be sent to the taxpayer. So, what are the process? So, there are 4 basic procedures. Bakit tatlo lang ito? Tatlong following basic procedures. First, determination of the amount due. Issuance of proper notice to the taxpayer regarding the amount of tax liability. Enforcement or demand for payment simultaneous with the giving of notice. Okay? Yan ang procedure natin. So, tingnan yung how much is the liability. And there must be notice, no? About the liability. So, magsulat talaga. And there is demand of payment. Okay? Prescribed period of assessment. The assessment periods allowed under the NIRC, the National Internal Revenue Code, are as follows. 3 years from the date of filing the return. Okay? If the return was filed before the last day of filing, the 3 years period will start after the last day of filing the return. So, ano ibig sabihin nito? So, let's have an example, no? Example. Taxpayer filed the return on March 1, 2019. The last day of filing is April 15, 2019. So, valid assessment, 3 years prescribed period. 20, 21, 22. Okay? So, kung mag-assess ka within the 3 period, valid pa yan until April 15, 2022. Kung maglampas na yan, hindi na yun valid. Null and void na yun. So, kung si BIR, kaya yung mga BIR, maghahanap talaga yan, no? Then, gawa ng mga assessment nga, meron kang liability na ganito. If the return was filed after the mandated period of filing, the 3-year period of assessment will start from the date of filing the return. So, we have an example. Taxpayer filed April 15, 2019. The last day of filing is June 30, 2019. So, last day of valid assessment, June 30, 2020. Mandated filing, so still 3 years. Magbe-base sa last day of filing. Okay? Next, 10 years from the date of discovery or omission. Failure to file a return. Return filed was false or fraudulent with the intention to evade the tax. Say example. Fraudulent return filed April 15, 2018. Na-discover ang fraud June 30, 2019. So, wala pa na-prescribe, no? Kasi 3 years yung prescription, so pwede yun. Naka-discover ang BIR June 30, 2019. So, kung na-discover, last day of valid assessment, 10 years na yan. June 30, 2029. 10-year prescribed period. Ha? So, valid yun, no? Based sa discovery of fraud. Pag discover, wala pang 3 years, so yung assessment, valid yung assessment sa katong pagka June 30. So, kaya na-discover nga na fraud. Ang prescription, ana, within 10 years, no? Last day of valid assessment. Now, let's go to the assessment procedure. Tax assessment is valid if the notice of assessment has been issued within the allowable period, and also if certain legal procedures are followed. So, we have the formal assessment phase procedures. The formal notice of assessment may be sent by registered mail or by personal delivery. If sent by personal delivery, the receipt should be acknowledged by the taxpayer or by the representative with signature and date received. Okay, so naagad siya formal assessment. So, i-deliver. kailangan mayroong signatory na receive, na acknowledge. And then, pag receive, pwede mag-protest, no? Fees of the assessment. Within 30 days after the receipt of formal notice of assessment, the taxpayer may protest the assessment made and request for reinvestigation. Otherwise, the tax assessment will become final and executory. So, within 30 days, dapat mag-protest ka. The protest may either cover all the issues involved in the formal notice of assessment or involve only some issues in the assessment. In both types of protest, the taxpayer is required to state all the facts and bases of the protest. Otherwise, such protest will be considered null and void. Likewise, in both cases, also, all the required documents and evidence shall be submitted within 60 days from the date of the filing of protest. So, meaning, pag-receive, no? I-acknowledge, no, na i-perma. Within 30 days, mag-protest. And then, dapat within 60 days, from the date of the filing of protest, dapat mag-submit ng documents. Otherwise, yung deficiency tax assessment final na yan unregulatory. Next, appeal on tax assessment decision. The taxpayer may protest under the following instances: when the protest has been denied by the revenue officer of BIR, when the BIR made no action within 180 days, pinamanika 186 months, no? From the submission of the required documents. So in both cases, the taxpayer may elevate the protest within 30 days from the receipt of the decision issued by the BIR commissioner or duly authorized representative to the Court of Tax Appeal. Otherwise, the decision shall become final and obligatory. So, di ba nag-protest na no? From, balik ta. For example, the BIR found delinquency or deficiency in our tax. Nakakita siya ng mga deficiency. So, magbigay yan siya ng assessment. And then, yung assessment mail to our company. Pag mail na, dapat i-acknowledge yun, no? Dapat pirmahan ng taxpayer. Then, within 30 days, kung hindi siya satisfied sa assessment, pwede siya mag-protest within 30 days. Pero, hindi siya mag-protest, final na yun, no? And then, after 30 days, 60 days na po, 2 months, submit ng mga documents. Kaya kung hindi mag-submit ng documents, mga data or information, valid na yung i-assess ng BIR. So, after i-deny ng BIR ang protest. So, kung i-deny ng BIR, you can go up, you may appeal, no, on the tax assessment decision. Okay? Appeal on tax assessment. So, when the protest has been denied and there is no action within 180 days, so pwede tayo mag-appeal. In both cases, the taxpayer may elevate the protest within 30 days from the receipt of decision issued by the BIR commissioner or duly authorized representative to the court. Otherwise, it shall become final and obligatory. So, let's look on the summary of procedures. This is our procedures. Okay, tarong mo na to. Okay, first, the BIR issue formal assessment notice, nag-letter. Taxpayer may protest it within 30 days. Submit the proof 60 days from filing. BIR deny the protest or no act on proof submitted. Mag-appeal tayo sa Court of Tax Appeal within 30 days from the receipts of denial. Or within 180 days from the lapse, no? Walang actions. Okay? And then, pwede po mag-appeal to the Supreme Court, no? Within 15 days from the receipt of denial. So, kasi BIR decision is final and executory if no protest, no submission of proof, and of course, no appeal. Magiging final na yan and executory. Okay. Now, let's go to the collection. Collection of taxes is an administrative aspect of taxation. This refers to the process wherein the government devises effective and efficient ways to collect the tax. It also cannot enforce of tax payment. Generally, taxes are payable in money. However, in the event the taxpayer cannot pay, diba? As I mentioned on itong meta language, the government is equipped with various remedies to effect the collection of taxes. Pwede kunin sa personal property, pwede on the real property. It depends upon the government. So what are our remedies for collection of delinquent taxes? We have administrative remedies, distraint of all personal property. Okay, ito yung seizure of personal property, no? Either tangible, intangible, what else? Or mga kuan, pwede sa land, mga land, mga may kalupaan ka dyan. Or pwede din, distraint personal property pala. Personal property, yung mga vehicle. Or levy of real property, yung land. No? That is administrative remedy. How about judicial remedies? Meron din judicial remedies, no? May civil action. Okay? And criminal action. Takot naman ito, no? So, civil action refers to judicial proceedings undertaken to enforce protection of private rights and properties. So, okay lang ng civil. Yung mahirap, yung criminal, no? Punishment for violation of criminal laws. Ang mga criminal offenses, especially kining tax evasion. Either or simultaneously may be pursued in the discretion of the authorities charged with the collection of tax once assessed become final and demandable. However, if the tax liability is not more than 100 pesos, distraint and levy may not be availed of. Okay? So, ang conjud, if it's more than 100, pwede mag-distraint and levy. Distraint for personal. Levy for real. Okay. Other remedies of the government. To enforce collection of tax liabilities, the government is equipped with administrative or judicial actions. The other remedies available are ito. Enforcement or forfeiture of property. I-transfer yung ownership of the property to the government. Enforcement of tax lines. Refers to the legal claim on property, real or personal established by law to serve as security for payment of tax liabilities in case of default. Murag prenda, no? Tax line. Security of payment. Secure. Entering into compromise. Contract whereby the parties involved okay. By reciprocal concessions, no, avoid litigation or put an end to one already commenced. Usually ito, kasagaran, no? Kung may subject for assessment na sa BIR, ito ang usual remedy ng mga client, no? Mag-compromise na lang, no? Compromise. Ano yung meeting on the they will meet on the center. Magkano yung tax? Sigaran po na abuse, na compromise. Minimum amount of compromise settlement. Ito yung minimum. For cases of financial incapacity, 10% of the basic assets tax for taxpayer without source of income, a zero or negative net worth, or non-operating company for a period of 3 years or more. Okay, we have also 20% of the basic assets tax liability. Taxpayer is dissolved corporation. So, kung insolvent, no, negative ang net worth ng taxpayer, 10%. Ay, negative naman, no? Period of 3 or more years. Kung dissolve corporation, 20% of the assessed tax. Okay? And then we have also 40% of the basic assessed tax liability for the taxpayer that has surplus of earnings deficit resulting in impairment in the original capital by at least 50%. Ito yung mga minimum amounts na of compromise settlement. Ito yung other remedies. Okay, other remedies. Pwede din requiring the filing of bonds as an assurance for compliance of tax laws. Magbili ng bond. Appropriate bond in order to assure the collection of tax dues. Then giving of rewards. Muna yung mga kuan sa BIR, no? To qualified tax informers. Sumbong din sa BIR. Any person except an internal revenue officer or employee, other public officials or relative within the 6th degree of consanguinity, who voluntarily gives definite and sworn information of the BIR to the discovery of fraud or any violation thereof shall be rewarded. Musumbong sa BIR kini naani siya yung mga kuan. Naani siya yung mga tax delinquency, mga kulang sa payment of tax. So bibigyan ng reward. Giving reward to the tax informer. Okay? So how to give the reward? 10% based on revenues, surcharge, imposed or collection for giving of voluntary sworn information to the BIR. Also 10% based on tax imposed, including surcharges and penalties, or 1 million, whichever is lower, for violation of the tax code. 10% based on the fair market value, or 1 million, whichever is lower, for discovery and seizure of smuggled goods. Para lang makakolekta ng tax, no? Especially karon, ginoo ko, no? Medyo kulang talaga yung collection siguro ng BIR kasi ang daming nag-close ng business. So, kung merong magbigay ng informant to the BIR, bibigyan siya ng 10%. Next, imposition of surcharges for non-payment or late payment refers to the rate imposed for surcharges, penalties, and interest. These are the following rates. So, familiarize the rates now of the surcharge, etc. 25% surcharge for late filing, late payment of tax due, filing in wrong BIR office, failure to pay deficiency tax assessment on the prescribed time. And then we have also 50% surcharge for willful neglect to file the return for false or fraudulent return filed. When say willful neglect, there is habitual late return filing. False or fraudulent return, there is deliberate and substantial understatement of taxable sales, receipts, or income, overstatement, or of allowable deduction or business expense. Yan ang surcharge natin. Another remedy of the BIR, making arrest, no, search, seizure in certain cases. At tuon ang property, at tuon ang taxpayer. We have also deportation of aliens who violated the tax laws after the final decision of the Court of Tax Appeal or the BIR. Pero with ano pa yan? With judicial proceedings talaga yan, no? Next, inspection and examination of taxpayers' records, book of account. Itong usual nga ginabuhat ng BIR. Okay? And use of National Tax Register refers to record kept, maintained bearing the names of person residing in the community. So, yun ang mga other remedies. So, let's go to the flow chart. Ito yung simplified. So, upon delinquency, nakita ng BIR officer, mag-issue siya ng notice, no, of levy simultaneously or after distraint. Pwede sa real or personal property. And then within 20 days after serving the notice, the BIR officer would advertise the property, with complete information for 30 days. Possibilities are taxpayers pays all taxes and charges. The BIR officer, returns ang levy property to owners kung nagbayad. Kung gi-sale ang levied properties to the public, going to the BIR officer, apply the proceeds to all taxes and charges and return the excess to the owner. If there is no bidder or insufficient bid price, forfeit kwaon ang property in favor of the government. And the taxpayer has 1 year to redeem. Otherwise, it's final. Diba? Again, taxpayer. Careful lang gid tayo, no? Kasi merong talagang authority ang government. Has like power of taxation. Power of the commissioner. Make assessment and prescribe additional requirements for tax administration and enforcement. They have the power also to interpret the tax laws and decide tax cases. Obtain information, summon, examine, and take testimony of person. Delegate powers vested by him by the code to any subordinate officer with rank equivalent to a division chief of hire. Suspend the business operation of taxpayer. Compromise, abate, and refund for or credit taxes. Power to expand his authority to look into taxpayers' bank accounts, share, obtain information with the requesting foreign tax authority. Okay, muna ang power of the commissioner. The power of commissioner that cannot be delegated. Ito yung mga power nga hindi pwede i-delegate ng commissioner. The power to recommend the promulgation and regulation by the Secretary of Finance. The power to issue rulings of first impression or to reverse, revoke, or modify rulings of BIR. Cannot be delegated then the power to compromise or abate any tax liability. The power to assign or reassign internal revenue officers to establishment where articles is subject to excise tax are produced or kept. Okay? Power and duties of the BIR. Ito yung power ng BIR. Assessment and collection, tax fees, surcharge, charges, etc. Enforcement of all forfeiture penalties, fines, etc. Execution of judgment in all cases decided in disfavor by the Court of Tax Appeals and ordinary courts. Administration of supervisory and police powers conferred or granted to it. To give effect, no, to and administer the supervisory and police power conferred to it by the tax code. They have also the power to recommend to the Secretary of Finance all needful rules and regulations for the effective enforcement of the provision of the tax code. Yan ang power and duty nila. How about the authority of the revenue officer? Perform assessment functions pursuant to the letter of authority issued by the Revenue Regional Director. Examine taxpayers within the jurisdiction of the district in order to collect the correct amount of tax. Recommend the assessment of any deficiency tax due. The same manner that the said acts should have been performed by the Revenue Regional Director himself. Yun, kaya mag-investigate talaga sila. Especially now, no? Kuan naman, electronic filing na. So, madali na makita ng BIR if there are delinquency and tax deficiency. And they can already collect they can already assess your tax. But, uunahin talaga yan yung mga malalaking company. No? Malalaking company kasi sila yung makabayad sa BIR. Yung mga smaller company, SMEs, medyo matagal na yan. But take note ha, meron tayong prescription. Ha? So, dapat, balik ta sa prescription. So, ganito, dapat within 3 years. No? Kaya maningkabot yun na sila nga maka-assess within 3 years. Within 3 years. Kasi after the 3 years, prescribe na yan, null and void na yan. Pero kung nakadiscover ng mga fraudulent activity, ma-prescribe yan until 10 years after the discovery of fraud. So that's our lessons now for week 8 and 9. So you need to answer let us check, let us analyze of your SIM. Okay? Please answer everything. So I think yun lang. So good luck to your studies.